It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show for Tuesday, February 25th. This is B Block, Bravo Block. John, yesterday you went on record as saying that, and let me try to get this correct because I got a lot of negative, like I said, I have two people complain about this. One of that I know, one I don't know, about glyphosate or whatever. How do you pronounce that again?
Glyphosate? Yeah, glyphosate.
And you say that is safe, okay? And
are they quoting an IARC study from 15 years ago?
Well, I guess nowadays you can't say any chemical is safe because, it depends on how you use it, how you apply it, stuff like that. But let me just ask you an interesting question, okay? If, let's say, all the Roundup, and it's interesting they were talking about this in 97.1 this morning because of the fact that apparently now Monsanto is switching to the fact that anytime they talk about this officially...
There's no Monsanto anymore.
Well, whatever, Bayer, whatever...
So let's start there. Yeah, let's be accurate.
Whenever they talk about
If we have to call out Craig and 270, then let's call out Monsanto and Bayer.
Well, John,
And let's use the correct name of the chemical, too. It's glyphosate. Go ahead, Brad.
Close only counts in hand grenades and horseshoes. You know what I'm saying? But having said that, okay, here's the opposite. Here's the question I have to ask of you. If it was illegal and you couldn't use it anymore, what would happen to the agricultural industry?
Folks would still get it and use it.
So they would do it illegally? The farmers would get it black market?
Yeah, I mean, so the hypothetical is the industry would tell you that if glyphosate was banned, let's say in the United States, it would take a long time for farmers to find ways to kill their weeds, and they would probably use herbicides that have a less friendly environmental profile than glyphosate. So in other words, they would replace, where they could, they would replace glyphosate with other herbicides that are not as quote-unquote friendly.
Okay, and here's the other question. I think I've asked you this before, and I can't remember what your answer was. When Bayer decided to acquire Monsanto, didn't they see this in the future, that this was going to be a problem?
Yeah, you would think so. And my speculation here, without violating anything that I may or may not have signed, is that there were probably folks at Bayer in Germany who strongly urged against the purchase of Monsanto because of liability. And remember, it's not just glyphosate lawsuits that are going on. The other chemistry called dicamba is quite controversial for alleged volatility profiles, drift, and damages created there, not for human health, but for effects on other crops. So I would suggest, Brad, that I would say there were probably people at Bayer or on the board of directors who said that the purchase of Monsanto was not a good idea, and those folks clearly did not win out. And they purchased Monsanto anyway.
Now, the reason we bring this up is because there's this, what is it? Was it a Senate bill or a House bill? Who put that bill forward about the...
A House bill, yep.
A House bill, which essentially would hold Bayer harmless? Isn't it because of the fact that they've got on the labels that are essentially say, hey, it's on the label. It's, the government gave us this label and we put it on the label, so therefore we don't have any liability. Wasn't that pretty much what the...
Yeah, the liability. And I was corrected on this. Not directly, but a gentleman named Darren Chappell, who's a state rep, pointed out on KSGF in Springfield yesterday that it's not blanket immunity for everything, but for human harm, you couldn't, if this bill passed, you could not say, Brad, if you were a farmer or anyone else, you could not go use Roundup in 2026 and then come back to Bayer in 2027 and say, look, it looks like I developed both a hangnail and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's clearly because of Roundup, and I'm going to sue you. Then the manufacturers, in this case Bayer, would be able to say, hey, we have a label on here from the federal government that lists the environmental and health profile of this chemistry. You cannot sue us for something that has a federal label on it. That's the legislation.
Interesting, but it's.
I'm curious, Brad, because I always want to know constructive feedback. What was constructive feedback about the conversation that you and I had yesterday?
Well, it was just to the point where, the one person said, you can't make a blanket statement by saying it's safe for humans because...
Sure, yeah. Can I interrupt, Brad? If I was at Monsanto/Bayer, and I'm not, an attorney would never allow me to put out a press release or a media statement that said glyphosate is safe. So, Of course not. Like, you can't say because toxicity is based on dose, and there's a million anecdotes about this. But yeah, I can't say driving my car is safe. I can't say that the coffee that I'm drinking is safe. Sure.
Well,
like that, the reader makes a great nitpicky point.
Right. Man, but, I don't know. Here we go down this whole crazy road again because of the fact that it's almost like the abortion issue. There's no middle ground on this. You're either like, hey, those crops, that Monsanto stuff, or I know you're going to say, it's not Monsanto.
But
Bayer's.
It used to be Monsanto. Yeah, it used to be Monsanto stuff.
What used to be Monsanto, Bayer's product, that really helps our economy because of the fact that we don't have to, if you go back to the old days of farming, you literally had people who would go through the fields and pull weeds by hand, correct?
Yeah. It kept women out of school. Now, Brad, you would probably say that's a good thing. But in developing countries, you have women that are able to go to school now, girls that can go to school now because they're not in the field either picking bugs off their crops or pulling weeds.
Now, John, is that a company line or is that really true?
That's absolutely true.
So
we met with Brad. I met stakeholders from Africa. God, that's corporate speak, stakeholders. I met customers from Africa who are able to either grow cotton or grow corn and these other things, who their mom didn't go to school because she had to pull weeds and pick bugs off of crops. And thanks to BT technology and herbicide tolerant technology, now there's a million other cultural factors that go into it. But there's no dispute that farming has advanced because of insecticides and herbicides.
Okay, moving on to something else. Okay, what do you think? I'm going to ask the John Combest view of this. Do you think this is sort of interesting that there's some revolt going on against Elon Musk? Because over the weekend he says this thing, every federal employee should give me 5 minutes of their time and give me 5 things they accomplished in the previous week. And already you've got, I think it was Kash Patel of the FBI saying, don't do that. Okay, what do you think of this whole thing? What do you think of?
I think, in fact, I had, and I'm going to obfuscate some details here. I had someone who makes a living now in Washington, D.C. ask me about this topic involving Elon. And I think it's a matter of, you are going to see in the next few months a right-wing / libertarian mini backlash against Elon Musk. And for things like, Brad, you just highlighted give me the 5 things you did last week thing. You're just going to have people flex a little bit against Elon Musk. And it's not going to have to do so much with the particular policy suggestion, like tell me what you did last week, but it's going to have to do with personality. And everybody wants to be close to Donald Trump, and everybody wants to be a right-wing darling. And I think that Elon Musk has gotten so much of that attention now that other people close to Trump are going to want to try to flex a little bit and undermine Elon Musk.
Well, I see. Here's the interesting part of this. If that happened when you were at Monsanto and then Bayer as you went through the transition, if that memo came out, John Combest and everybody on the payroll, I want you to give me, the CEO, whoever that was at the time, I want you to give me 5 things that you accomplished for Bayer this week. Would you go like, I'm not doing that?
We did it every week.
See, that's the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that if you're working for a company and they're trying to be efficient, they're trying to move that company forward, I think that the owner or the CEO or the stockholders, whoever is in charge, has the right to say to every employee, okay, tell me what you did to help this company last week. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
and I think everybody that's been in a big company knows that you can take that too far, because you can certainly come Thursday or Friday when you're wrapping up essentially, hey, here's all the progress we made on our projects this week. You can spend too much time reporting out and not enough time doing actual work. And that's always a risk. But it's also important. One thing that no one's talking about here, Brad, is there's going to be opportunities for when you do this to be like, oh, wait a minute. Why do we have 4 people doing that exact same thing who don't talk to each other, who sit in different offices, or in this case, work virtually in 4 different places? Why are we, if someone really looked at that, and if Elon used Grok to a little bit of AI to sort through this, you would see how many redundancies you have. So I agree with you completely, Brad. In the real world, in the private sector world, you got to do this stuff. You got to justify what you're doing, and it makes your company better.
Well, the interesting thing is, once we get off the air at 8 o'clock, Armstrong and Getty come on, and they talk about this quite a bit. And they use the anecdotal evidence of the radio business, okay? And having been, in the radio business, but not, running my own operation for 27 years now, which will come to an end in 10 to 20 years when we get this deal worked out with friends of KWMU. But hold on a minute. I haven't coughed in a while. I don't know where that came from. Okay. Having said that, there was a time when Emmis, which was run by John Beck, which had, Casey and The Point and 97 to 1, there was a time when they cut the staff in half. And because of budget constraints and because, the economy changed, this was going back to like 2008, 2009, 2010, they cut the staff in half. Half the people were let go. The station still stayed on the air. Commercials still got on the air. Records were still played on the music station. There was talk on the talk stations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Life went on, and Armstrong and Getty talk about this all the time. They've been through this corporate-wise as well too. So you look at that and you think, okay, it's an example is like with X, when Musk took over, he got rid of 80% of the staff, and yet is Twitter working today, John?
Absolutely.
Do you notice any appreciable difference pre-Musk, post-Musk?
None. It's better in some ways, I think.
Okay, so why is everybody so afraid of doing that with the federal government or any governmental agency for that matter? Is it because
you know the answer to that, Brad? Because if you've been in government for a long time, or even a large corporation for a long time, you build your fiefdom by getting more and more money, hiring more and more staff, and getting more and more people dependent on you. So that when times like this come, you can say, well, you can't eliminate my job. I oversee 21 people and a budget of $8.7 million. I'm too vital. Cut those other people.
Well, I guess the thing that bothers me most about this is if you look at this, I'm going to use corporate speak, from a 30,000-foot view, you have so many people who talk about, I don't want to go into work anymore. I like staying home. Like I told you the story that they're out running NPR. They're saying, well, Susie Smith will have to spend another 3 days every day of her life driving back and forth to work, and she won't be there for her kids, and she won't be there to make them lunch and things like that. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, let's take this to the example of a company right in St. Charles County, General Motors. Let's say the person who puts the left front wheel on that Colorado that's coming down the assembly line every morning and, puts the lug nuts on there and tightens those lug nuts up and torques them to spec. Let's say that person wants to do that job from home. The point I'm trying to make is we've gotten so unproductive physically that we don't want to physically do anything other than sit at home. Get what I'm saying?
I get exactly what you're saying. And I think when you and I do not disagree on that. You and I might disagree on some things about how much has to be done in person, but stuff like that, where are you going to find somebody who's willing to drive and do manual labor for 40 hours a week? Like, lots of luck,
Well, but I think, come on, there are lots of people work there. I mean, they get paid very well. I mean, here's the crazy thing. If I wasn't in this business and somebody called me up, and matter of fact, I had a friend of mine. My mom used to teach with, my mom when she was working at Kirby Junior High, she taught with a guy who lived in High Hill, Missouri. Do you know where High Hill, Missouri is?
Yeah, it's in Montgomery County.
Yeah, it's like halfway between St. Louis and Jefferson City. And every day that guy got up in the morning, drove from High Hill, Missouri to Kirby Junior High up in North County. I mean, at least an hour drive. Sometimes when he'd hit traffic on 70, coming east on 70, it was an hour and a half. And once again, in the St. Louis area, the average commute is like 28 minutes or something like that, maybe not even that long. Okay, you go to like New York City or like LA, 28 minutes would be a cakewalk. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
I do know. Yeah.
I don't know.
But it's what we've gotten acclimated to as well. And you and I talk about this a lot, Brad, but there's just no way that somebody who leaves a job where they've been used to only maybe have to go into the office 1 day a week, if that, is going to accept a job where they have to go and show their face 2 or 3 days a week. It's ridiculous. You're not going to attract top talent that way.
Well, maybe the top, maybe we're better. Maybe we're like the Cardinals. Maybe we don't need top talent anymore. Maybe we just develop
That's
that.
one way to look at it.
We develop that farm system, and we'd say we're not hiring top talent anymore. We're going to hire from within. We're going to promote. See what happened to that philosophy of hiring from within? Of creating an organization that nurtures people and teaches them and holds their hand and makes them to the point where when they come in one door, the entrance door through HR, then when they in 40 years they leave and they are super technically skilled and great at their job. What happened to that, John? Tell me what happened.
Yeah. Well, and it goes both ways. Like, you can't expect a company, you can't put all the blame on the company when employees consistently tell you, hey, I plan on working here for 3 to 5 years and then going somewhere else, taking a better offer.
Something we didn't talk about, and let's talk about this next break as far as education. There was a thing that came out a couple weeks ago that Trump talked about, which I did some research on, and it was true. There was a survey that came out that talked about this statistic, and it made me very, very, very sad to see what's happened to our educational system. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know. I'll be surprised by it. MC Block.
You're never surprised by anything.